Okay, welcome back. It's Mr. Ross again. This is day 1, week 4. We're going to be solving quadratic equations by factoring. The key whenever you solve by factoring is you want to set it equal to 0. Alright, so on the first one, you can see it's not set equal to 0. So what we're going to do is we're just going to add our 6n to both sides. You could have subtracted the n squared, but that would have left you with a negative. So we got n squared plus 6n equals 0. Now this is more like your basic one. There's only two terms. They both have n, so we're going to use the GCF approach here. We're going to take out an n, and we're going to end up with n plus 6 left over, and that equals 0. If you're not sure about your answer, you can always double check. N times n is n squared, and n times 6, of course, is 6n. Now, both of those terms you set equal to 0. So n equals 0 and n plus 6 equals 0. Now, if you notice at the top here, they've got the answers listed. This one's easy, obviously. N equals 0. And the second one, you just subtract 6, and n equals negative 6. Again, we expect to get two answers because we have an n squared. And those are our two answers. If you'd like to check them, you can, but as you can see here, they're all going to work out on this problem. All right, now number 2 has 3 terms. So what we're going to need to do, it's still the same rule. We've got to set it equal to 0. But this time we're going to just move one number over. We're going to add 35. So we're going to get a squared minus 12a plus 35, and that equals 0. Now, this one has 3 terms, so this is going to be your traditional 2 sets of parentheses. What's going to give you a squared? A times a. And what are the 2 factors you readily think of for 35? Most people will list 5 and 7 from their multiplication tables. 5 plus 7 equals 12, which is what we want to get right here. Now, 12 is negative, so they would both have to be negative. And if you notice the answer is positive, it's because they did the last step. When you set it equal to 0, you will get the opposite answer. You will add 5, a equals 5, and you will add 7, and a equals 7. Those are your 2 answers, 5 and 7. Now, all the other problems are just going to be variations of that problem we just did on number 2. So number 3, as you can see, we want to get it equal to 0. So we're just going to add 8x to both sides. X squared plus 8x, you want to put it in order, plus 16 equals 0. Now this one only has one answer listed. It's because it's the same answer twice. I'll show you what I mean. X times x. Now 16 has a number of factors, 1 and 16, 2 and 8. We want to go with 4 and 4 because that adds to 8 and it multiplies to 16. Both of them have to be positive. As you can see, you have the same answer twice. So you don't need to do it twice. You just take your x plus 4, set it equal to 0, subtract your 4, and x equals negative 4. So there's still 2 answers, but it's the same answer twice, so we don't need to list it twice. All right, number 4, more of the same. Oh, I need that here. All right, so we got to move 2 things on this one. We're going to have to move the 13p by subtracting it. We're just simply playing musical chairs here. We're just moving it. And we got to add the 40 over. So we're going to get p squared. That 13 is negative 13p, and the 40 is positive. Again, our goal is to set it equal to 0. So it's got our 3 terms, so we're going to have our p at times p. The 2 numbers I think of immediately for 40 would be 5 and 8. I know there's more, but 5 plus 8 equals 13. They would both be negative because the 13 is negative. And when you set them equal to 0, you get the opposite answer because you're going to add them both. P equals 5 and p equals 8. Alright, so we have 4 problems left here for our notes. As you can see, now I've added a number in front. If you remember correctly from earlier in the year, we call this the AC method. Now, you notice I didn't move anything because it was already equal to 0, so that's a plus. But I do have to multiply the 7 times the negative 12. So 7 times negative 12 is going to be negative 84. So what you have to do is you have to think of factors, numbers that multiply together to get you the 84. And if you remember from earlier, you are going to have your 7r squared, and you're going to split that 17. All right, that's the two numbers that are going to go down here. All right, that's what you're trying to get. All right, so what two numbers, all right, from 84 are going to get you that 17? So we're thinking of factors of 84. This is where you just take your calculator out and you just start dividing. Obviously, it can't be 7 and 12 because it doesn't give me 17. But I would just take my calculator and divide by different numbers. The correct combination is 4 and 21. Now, 4 times 21 is 84. One of them would have to be negative because it is actually a negative 84. And so I need to get a negative 17, so I would need a positive 4 minus a 21. And that will give me my negative 17. So remember, you go back to your 17 and you split it up into a positive 4r and a negative 21r minus 12, and that equals 0. This becomes the grouping method. What does that first group have in common? They only have an r. So that gives me 7r plus 4. Now the second group, they're both negative, so we take out a negative. Both are divisible by 3, so we take out a 3. And then we get 7r. This ends up being a 7r plus 4. All right, so both groups have this in common, the 7r plus 4. So that's one of your parentheses. And then when you mark that out, you can see the other parentheses are minus 3. Now you end up with two parentheses, and as usual, you set them equal to 0. The first one obviously is going to be 3 because we're going to add it over. Now the second one may be a little more challenging, but it's not super difficult. On that one, we have to subtract the 4, and then we have to divide out the 7. So then I end up with negative 4 over 7. So my two answers, as you can see, match the answers at the top. Negative 4 over 7 and 3. Now this should be the most challenging one from this lesson. Solving quadratics by factoring. This is the AC method. So number 6 is going to be just like number 5, and 7 and 8 will be the same type of problem. So we got to do 8 times 5. So that's going to give us 40. What two numbers multiply to give us 40 and add to give us 41? Well, that would have to be 1 and 40. And since 41 is negative, they would both have to be, not both of them. Yes, both of them would have to be negative, a negative 1 and a negative 40. So, the first number, remember, stays the same, 8m squared. And then we split 41 into our two numbers, negative 1m and negative 40m. And then we can bring in our 5 at the end. We do what's called the grouping method. We group them together. What does the first group have in common? Well, they both have an m. That gives me an 8m minus 1. The second group, 40 and 5 are both divisible by 5, but I want the signs to match. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out a negative 5, and that'll give me a positive 8m minus 1. As you can see, both groups have the 8m minus 1. So that comes out. And that leaves me with m minus 5. To get our final answer, remember you have to take both of them and set it equal to 0. So we got m equals 5. And anytime there's a number in front of the variable, you're going to have to divide. So we add 1. So we get 8m equals 1, and then we divide out our 8. That's how we get our second answer of m equals 1 over 8. All right, number 7 and 8 are more the same. So we'll go through this one a little quicker. Number 7, we're just going to do 5 times negative 12. That's going to give us negative 60. Two numbers that multiply to give us 60. Now there's quite a few numbers. You could try out 2 times 30, 1 times 60. I mean, you could go on for a while. But the combination we're looking for is 4 and 15. Okay, one of them has to be negative to get the negative 11. So if 15 is negative, then we can get a negative 11. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that 5x squared. We're going to split our negative 11 into a negative 15x and a positive 4x minus 12. Now I could have put the 4 first and the 15 last, or negative 15 last, but I wanted to match up the 5 with the 15. I think that just matches up better. The first group has a 5x in common. You remember GCF. Divide out your 5x and you get x minus 3. And if you haven't noticed this already, the second parenthesis has to be exactly the same. So it has to be x minus 3. So in order for us to get that x minus 3, then we would have to divide out a positive 4. Both groups have the x minus 3 in common. That leaves you with a 5x plus 4 left over. And then, again, you just take those two numbers, or two parentheses, and set them equal to 0. And solve. The first one's pretty easy. You just add the 3, x equals 3. The second one, you got 2 steps. You got to subtract your 4. And then you just divide out your 5. So then that gives me negative 4 over 5. All right, number 8, the only difference between number 8s and the other ones is that this guy needs to be 0. So all you have to do is just add him over. Whenever you factor, it needs to be equal to 0. So 3v squared, now plus a 10v, minus a 48 equals 0. Still got to use the AC method. So when you multiply 3 times negative 48, you're going to get negative 144. Now most people are familiar with 144 because of 12 times 12. But 12 times 12 will not work. It's not going to give you 10. So this one you may have to, play around a little bit with the calculator till you get the right number. But it should be 18 and 8. 18 times 8 is 144. And 18 and 8 are 10 apart. Now you need a positive 10. So that means your 8 is negative. So 3v squared. Then we're gonna bring in the 18v. And then we're going to bring in the negative 8v minus 48 equals 0. Group them together. The first group has a 3v GCF in common. That'll give us v plus 6. Now remember, the second group has to be the same thing, so it also has to be a v plus 6. So we take out a negative 8 for that to happen. All right, then we just set them equal to 0. All right, when we take out our v plus 6, and then we get our 3v minus 8. V plus 6 equals 0, and 3v minus 8 equals 0. Obviously, you're going to subtract that one. You're going to get v equals negative 6. This one, you're going to have to add 8, and then divide out the 3. And as you can see, our answers match at the top. All right, so hopefully you're able to solve these problems after watching this video. Again, this is solving quadratic equations by factoring. Look at my homepage again for my office hours for Zoom chats, and I'll be more than happy to go over them if you have more questions. All right, good luck, guys.